Hello and welcome back to the very first WorldSkills UK live online International Skills Summit. My name is Simon Lederman and it's good to have you with us wherever you're watching, either in the UK where we are this morning or around the world. Now, as you know, the world has changed, and that is why this event, these 2 days of the International Skills Summit, are remote, but many things have not changed, and one of those is at the heart of the 2 days of these sessions, and that is that skills have always been important in the world of young people as they develop and begin their careers, and probably at this point in our history they've never been more important than they are today, and that is the root of our discussions over the next 2 days. And as with all great international summits, I'm going to start with a very brief apology. For those of you who've been watching on the Chrome browser, we hear there have been some problems, some issues. It's probably because I've pressed the mute button or I turned it off and on again and it hasn't. I'm sure it's my fault, but we think we may have solved the problem. Please let us know, and hopefully it will not hinder too much your viewing experience from now onwards. Joining me in the studio is Dr. Neil Bentley-Gottman, OBE. Neil, you are CEO of WorldSkills UK, and I'm delighted to say that in this next session, it will be Shane Mann, who's Managing Director of LSECT, who's going to be in conversation with the Right Honourable Robert Halfon MP, Chair of Education Select Committee, and we hope a bit later the Right Honourable Al Milton, who's the former Skills Minister. During that conversation, as I say, Neil Bentley-Gottman will be here in the studio to listen and to interject as necessary. But in the meanwhile, Shane, I'm going to hand over to you. It's your session. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Simon. Thank you very much. And actually, I have managed to unmute myself. I think that'll be the one of the catchphrases of 2020, the "you're on mute" conundrum with Zoom. I'm delighted to be chairing this session. Thank you very much to WorldSkills UK for asking me to participate this morning and to be part of this incredible International Skills Summit. And it's great to be joined by Robert Halfon, the Chair of the Education Select Committee, and of course the former Skills Minister for the FE sector. Hopefully we will be joined shortly by Robert's successor, Anne Milton. Just a few technical difficulties for Anne. Hopefully she'll be doing one of those digital skills qualifications that the current minister is very keen to remind us of their importance continually. Robert, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Very nice to be on. I wish I was there in person, but we'll do that next year. And I like your Christmas tree, if it is a Christmas tree.
It's not, it's a fig leaf tree. I haven't yet put my Christmas decorations up. Although I see that some people are going very early this year, which is, I think, to lift the spirits of the nation. So we're going to kickstart in a mo, but I just want to remind everybody that within this session, there is around 20 minutes or so, a 20-minute opportunity for you, the audience at home, to ask some questions. So to submit a question on the right-hand side of the platform that we're using, you'll see a little menu bar, and within the menu, there's an Ask a Question box. Please do use the time over the next 20 minutes or so to submit your questions, and they'll be moderated by the team back in the studio, and I'll be able to ask Anne and Robert your questions. So the reminder that this session is delivering skills excellence opportunities for all. And I wanted to start with a bit of a broad question here, Robert. What does skills excellence mean for you?
Well, skills excellence means that we are a skills and apprenticeship nation, that we have a parity of steam between technical and traditional academic education, that we offer everyone a ladder of opportunity to climb up, make sure that if they want an apprenticeship, they get one, or if they have a high quality skills education. And that's why we need to ensure, as I say, there's parity of esteem between technical and traditional education. The Baker Clause, which is supposed to be about ensuring that careers on skills and apprenticeships should be properly taught in schools, properly enforced, in my view, with penalties for non-compliance. We should boost apprenticeships. We're facing huge struggles at the moment with decline in apprenticeships because of the COVID. So supporting smaller businesses, sweeping away bureaucracy, increasing the public sector target, which is currently 2.3%. I mean, if you just take an example, if the public sector were to hire 50,000 new members of staff a year, and the target was increased by 5 percentage points each year, we'd end up with almost 4,000 new apprenticeships in 2021 and over 11,000 by 2024. We need to focus the levy pot on apprenticeships for 16 to 24-year-olds and also boost degree apprenticeships. My dream is that universities should work towards a target of 50% of students undertaking degree level apprenticeships. If we just carried on the way we are, we could actually achieve that over the next 10 years. And of course, we need to do a lot more on flexible adult skills, lifelong learning. We're doing our own inquiry, the Education Committee, into lifelong learning. Sadly, spending on adult education and skills has fallen by 45% over the last 10 years. The employer-led training is down by 60% since the end of the 1990s. So we need to incentivize employers, perhaps with a skills tax credit, to ensure that they retrain their workers as well.
Just touching on the apprenticeship levy, Robert, you mentioned that it should be focused on younger people, it should be more targeted to them. But in terms of the adults, we've obviously seen a large number of adults benefiting from the apprenticeship levy. What would be the solution in terms of ensuring that adults can still reskill through the apprenticeship scheme? Should the levy be refocused on young people solely?
Well, absolutely. We need to keep the levy to ensure that businesses retrain their workers, but that doesn't mean gaming the system and retrain them in certain MBA degrees that they might have done as a degree. Or what I'm talking about is that you incentivize companies to hire younger people. So you might be able to use more of your levy pot if you have a 16 to 18-year-old. You might use more of your levy pot if you have a young person from a disadvantaged background. You might use more of your levy pot if you hire someone where we have real skills deficits. So that might be in STEM areas, it might be in nursing, it might be in teaching, if we were allowed to have teaching degree apprenticeships, which sadly we're not, although we're allowed postgraduate teaching apprenticeships. But so where we have skills deficit, you'd use more of your levy pot, and you then incentivize companies, I think. And if they wanted to retrain their workers, they'd still use their levy, but obviously the incentive would be for disadvantaged younger people and meeting our skills needs.
In terms of the quality of apprenticeships, in recent years, we've had significant reform in the apprenticeship sector and the introduction of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. Do you think that the bodies involved and the instruments available are suitable to ensuring that there are excellent skills opportunities within the apprenticeship and technical education sector?
I do. I think that we now have the Institute for Apprenticeships. We now have the standards that have almost replaced all the frameworks. I think that's a good thing. There will always be problems. I think there's too much bureaucracy that needs to be swept away to make it much easier for smaller companies. I think that, but on the whole, we've also got Ofsted now expanding inspections, which I think is a good thing, particularly to sub-providers. And I think that, in fact, they came to our committee yesterday, and I urged that rather than Ofsted, if they find a provider that is facing significant problems, rather than waiting 24 months for change, that it should be reduced to 12 months. But I think the will is there to ensure quality. We've got incredible providers around the country. We've got incredible FE colleges around the country. And there's been a huge change over the past few years.
And significant change is going to come as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. I want to touch on the current pandemic and its impact and the short and longer term future. Are you concerned nationally and globally about the impact the pandemic will have on skills excellence? So, in terms of the economic situation, unemployment, and the impact that it will likely have on people's aspirations. What role can we as educators, employers, and also the government play to tackle this?
Well, I think it's the COVID has been a disaster for younger people. It's been a disaster for everyone, but younger people's education over the past 6 months. I mean, even before the pandemic, a third of England's 16 to 19-year-olds had low basic skills. We've got the fourth industrial revolution on the way, and one study from one of the big consultancies suggested that 28% of jobs taken by 16 to 24-year-olds could be at risk of automation by the 2030s. And we know that the number of apprenticeship starts in the first half of the last academic year dropped 15% for those aged 16 to 19. And the Social Mobility Commission has said there's much greater decline in the starts for apprentices from disadvantaged backgrounds, 36% compared with their better off peers. So there are real problems. We have a skills deficit anyway. We've got to meet that skills deficit. We've got to close it. I strongly welcome what the Chancellor has done in terms of the opportunity guarantee. I hope that we move towards a full, genuine apprenticeship guarantee where every young person, as far as possible, is guaranteed an apprenticeship. As I mentioned before, I think universities should work towards a target of 50% of their students doing degree level apprenticeships. I describe degree apprenticeships as my two favourite words in the English language because they solve so many problems. They help the disadvantaged climb up the ladder of opportunity. They increase prestige for apprenticeships. There's no loan, no debt. Most apprentices get jobs at the end, highly skilled jobs as well. And of course, there needs to be radical reform to lifelong learning, as I mentioned, and we need to look at things like lifelong learning accounts for individuals so they can choose what kind of adult learning they want to do, whether it's community learning, whether it is going to an FE college, whether it is going to university or doing some form of higher education. But they should have lifelong learning accounts. We should also give skill credits to businesses. We give businesses R&D credits. Why on earth don't we give them skills credits as well if they invest in adult education?
One of my concerns with the current situation inevitably is the unemployment.
Actually, Shane, sorry. Yeah, can I just, I beg your pardon, I should have, one thing I've been struck by is the one part of the education system that has been incredibly resilient has been the FE further education sector. I mean, I have seen and spoken to FE principals. I've spoken to my own Harlow College, which I'm very proud of. And it is extraordinary that they've kept learning going all the way through. They have made sure that the students had tech. And I think actually FE providers, other providers have been the unsung heroes of what's been going on in COVID. We've been looking at the schools and we know that 2.3 million pupils did barely any learning at all. But this has been the opposite case in terms of the FE sector. And I think everyone involved in the FE sector deserve a round of applause, and their achievements during COVID in incredibly difficult circumstances. And we have to remember, we go back to April when we were all very scared. We didn't know what was going on. We were all in national lockdown for months. And yet the FE sector performed against the odds, and they should be given a lot of credit by the government for that.
As publisher of FE Week, I've seen firsthand, week in, week out, the amazing job that the training providers and the FE colleges have done. So I completely second your congratulatory remarks to the sector, Rob. In terms of the impact of coronavirus, it inevitably will lead to an unemployment crisis. That's certainly what some of the public bodies are predicting and forecasting and planning for at the moment. How do you think educators can support employers? Because there's going to be a big issue here with a lot of the smaller businesses really, really struggling. You look at hospitality sector, for example, a lot of those roles and opportunities sit there next year, and the hospitality industry is an enormous provider of apprenticeships.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. I should thank FE Week for its support for WorldSkills UK. It's constant and really welcome. And what you do, and of course all the work you do with your newspaper. But it is a difficult question because I've met so many people who've lost their jobs in hospitality. I spoke to a young mother. She'd been working 18 years with a hotel, lost her job, really worried, 3 children. This is happening all over the place. Made redundant, very little redundancy money. I think it's going to be very difficult with hospitality companies because of what they're going through. It may be that FE colleges, because part of the technical education reforms are you're supposed to work in will have work experience in companies. I think that's going to be difficult for companies unless there's some big financial incentive. But it may be that what the government could do is have a change whereby FE colleges could simulate the work of a company. So not just do the practical and academic learning, but actually simulate the work of working in a company. That might help, and especially during this time, ideally they would go directly to the business. But I think we have to be very understanding. It's going to be very difficult at the moment, and the strong links that FE colleges providers have with business, they just have to work with them day by day and have that dialogue, and just hope that once we come out of this, things will return slowly back to normal.
So, WorldSkills is obviously a global movement. Do you think there are ways we could use the WorldSkills movement to look and share best practice amongst other nations around what they're doing to tackle these issues following the pandemic?
Well, when I was a skills minister, the most exciting thing I ever did was going to WorldSkills UK event in Birmingham. It is just unbelievable what goes on.
Yeah.
And actually, one great moment was when I was with just by chance, I was looking at a booth, an exhibition stand, and there was a father and his daughter there, and the daughter was thinking about going to university, and they asked me what I thought about apprenticeships and skills. And I said, look around you, look at what's going on. And then they had a talk with the stand and the business behind the stand. And then by the end of it, the father and the daughter said to me that they were most likely going to try and do a higher level apprenticeship. And I was really over the moon. Skills UK is the jewel in the crown. And I think government need to make a lot more of it. I know it's strongly supported by the skills minister, Gillian Keegan. I think she's great, but I would be shouting about it every day. I would love it all over the country. I've asked for it to come to my own constituency of Harlow. I hope that will happen one day. I think it needs to be a travelling roadshow in a much bigger way, as opposed to one. Well, you have your massive event once a year, but literally a travelling roadshow to every town in the country that would go to a town or district or city, explaining to people, because the best way to show people why skills are so important, and we win as well. The British teams are doing incredibly well overseas, and why don't we make more of that? Channel 4 cover the all kinds of sports and things. Why don't TV should cover national TV? We should persuade national TV to cover WorldSkills UK, and I think it would create. It's part of what I call the evangelization of apprenticeships and skills. And I've always argued this, that you can have all the policy in the world, but unless you evangelize about it, it won't change the thing. And that's got to come from the top. And then you just have to show people WorldSkills UK, and you cannot but help be amazed by what goes on.
Yeah, WorldSkills UK Live is an incredible event. I've had the fortunate opportunity to go for the last 10 years, ever since it launched following WorldSkills London back in 2011. So, and have travelled, to many countries around the globe following the WorldSkills movement, from Sao Paulo to Leipzig in Germany, and most recently Kazan in Russia. And what's always struck me is the high benchmarking, the international standards, the high amount of skills that are required to compete in a WorldSkills competition. So not only does that help inspire young people to switch, like you say, from a more academic route into the degree apprenticeship route with the young people from a WorldSkills UK Live movement, but from an international perspective, that international community are reviewing the skills, the curriculums of all of these sort of qualifications on a global level to set these international standards. Do you think we as the United Kingdom could use those international standards and make them more integrated in our own skill system?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're world beating, but so we should remember that British teams win all the time in these WorldSkills tournaments. So, just being cheeky here, we might say that actually the rest of the world should follow our standards of skills. But I get what you're saying. There are international standards, and the more we can incorporate and work together with other countries and norms and learn from countries like Germany and Austria and Switzerland, places I've been to Germany and Switzerland to study their vocational system, pretty incredible. And the more we learn from those kind of countries, the better it will be.
We do incredibly well in terms of the more sort of traditional vocational areas, but you talk of this fourth industrial revolution, those sort of Asian countries perform incredibly. We're way behind in those categories. Should we be looking at furthering our reach in terms of subject areas that we perform well in to meet the needs of a fourth industrial revolution?
Well, I think the fourth industrial revolution is going to be huge. I read a book that was written in 2013, I think it was 2013, 2014, called The Rise of the Robots by Martin Ford. It's a bestseller, and it really explains it well. It's going to impact on every part of our workforce. This isn't just about manual labor, as previous industrial revolutions have been. I mean, I went to a bank in the city to discuss it with them, and they were getting rid of all their accountants because it was all being done by artificial intelligence. However, when I say getting rid of them, they were closing down their accountancy department almost, but they were actually retraining those accountancy workers in cyber security. And I think that is what is going to happen. We need to take advantage of this and retrain and reskill in order so that we're all ready for it. Dare I say it, newspapers and magazines now have been written by artificial intelligence. I'm sure that wouldn't happen with FE Week, but paintings have been done by artificial intelligence. They say 1 million McDonald's workers are going to go around the world. I actually think that the government needs to set up a royal commission on the impact of artificial intelligence and have the finest scientists, economists, society experts, educationalists, health experts in the land to look at actually what is going to be the impact of AI, robotics, automation, the fourth industrial revolution on our society. How will it impact employment? How will it impact education? I think there are going to be big changes on the way. And then we can work out how to respond to it. And it needs to be some of the greatest minds in the country. And we need to have the correct data because there's so much different data flying about. But whatever happens is going to have a huge impact on us, and we need to be able to respond to it.
So talking about government doing things and the launching of this Royal Commission, one of the big things that is coming out later this month, we're promised, is the white paper from the Department for Education, spearheaded by the Education Secretary. How important do you think the WorldSkills sort of approach in terms of international standards will play a key part in the white paper?
Well, that will be incredibly important. In essence, I mean, Gavin Williamson in his speech, which I think he should be given a lot of credit for, which he made a few months ago about the importance of technical education and being more like Germany, and saying that the 50% target of students going to university, was the wrong way to go about things. I really welcome that. But what the white paper needs to do is to ensure that FE is given the same prestige as other parts of the education system. And the elephant in the room, of course, is funding. And so we need to make sure that the funding mismatch that there's been some correction, funding mismatch that there has been between further education and other parts of our education system has changed, and that further education is given the proper funding that it needs. And to be fair, that Gavin Williamson did acknowledge that further education had been historically underfunded. And I would also like to see a lot more integration in terms of further education and adult learning in universities. What we need to do is create a system where it's all distinct. It's like lots of different silos. We have silos in our education system, when what it really should be is a train going to a destination. People get on the train, do a qualification, hop on and off, and may do different forms of education, but build up credits until they get to their destination. And FE should be much more integrated with higher education. I mean, further education could offer higher education so much, and I've seen it where it works in places like Warwick University, where they have strong links with the further education college, links with the University Technical College, UTC, and with schools, and you have that kind of train system operating. And I think that's what the white paper should be about. And also that the Secretary of State should put flesh on the bones when he says that the FE is going to be more like Germany and Austria. What does that mean in practice? How are we going to make it happen?
So in terms of flesh on the bones, we were promised this white paper would be bold and ambitious. Do you think it will be that, or do you think it will be a bit of a damp squib?
I'm hoping it will be bold, because the Secretary... I just noticed Anne Milton, a wonderful, brilliant skills minister and former MP. Lovely to be on with you. It's an honour to be on with you. You did a brilliant job, and you're passionate about skills and apprenticeships. But it's got to be bold, because otherwise the very bold speech that Gavin Williamson made on FE and skills a few months ago, what people will ask, what's the point of that? So it must be really, I hope it's going to be a revolutionary white paper, not just steady as she goes.
Thank you, Robert. Anne, welcome. So sorry that there were some technical difficulties with your connection. Good to see you. Poor Robert has had to cover for you for the past 25 minutes, but he's on a sterling job. But I just bring you in, Anne, on that conversation you entered as we were talking about the white paper. What's your view on the white paper in terms of how WorldSkills can be a part of the government's new ambition for the further education sector?
Well, what WorldSkills can do is it holds the ring on excellence. So in terms of benchmarking excellence, WorldSkills is the one that can do it. I think, I share Robert's passion on FE, absolutely. But I think what we should accept is that if you have a revolution, it's going to take a long time. And so evolution is what we want. What is really critical in the white paper, I think, is for colleges, independent training providers, and business and local areas to all be included, because unless those four parts of the system work together, then it's not going to work. And crucially, it's about money. You can say as much as you want how much you value FE, but unless you put the money in, then it's not going to happen.
You saw firsthand over in Abu Dhabi, if I'm right. Forgive me if I've got which WorldSkills competition you attended incorrect. Do you think we should be doing more in terms of the international standards set by WorldSkills and making a note of that within the white paper, so that we set an ambitious target to implement and integrate the WorldSkills international standards across the vocational system within the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know FE Week have backed the bid to host WorldSkills here. And what better way of signalling the government's seriousness about skills than saying that they will put in for a bid to host it here. And then we will have an opportunity to show excellence, as defined by WorldSkills, on home soil. And what we want to do is to be a country that other countries look to for examples of how you achieve excellence at skills at every level. I think it's really important when you talk about excellence, people assume a rising level. It's at every level. and for young people and adults.
FE Week sort of launched the unofficial Back the Bid campaign last year. And there was huge momentum with bodies such as the CBI backing it and numerous colleges and private training providers across the country. And we even got a kind of a supportive statement from the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson. Now, this was all way before the global pandemic and the recessions that are now going to set in. But do you, as former serving members of a Conservative government, do you think there is still an opportunity and a good case to be made that we should submit a bid to host a future WorldSkills competition in the next decade?
Yeah, well, FE Week did a very good job on advertising their support for the bid. There is really no reason to hesitate. I mean, why would you not want to host WorldSkills? It would have so much impact, not only on issues that, Robert and I have long felt needs to be addressed, like the esteem that FE is held in, the esteem that we accord to people who are skilled, but it would say that the government is really serious.
And Robert, what's your...
Oh, it's a no-brainer. Well, it's all you need to say. It would be amazing. I would love to come because I've never been to one overseas, and absolute must be done. And I would be delighted to help lobby for it in Parliament, and I'm sure Anne will as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. There'll be a queue out there of former skills ministers and current skills ministers and chairs of select committees lobbying for it. And, if people like the CBI are backing it as well. And the bit that I want to see in the white paper is, the importance of employers in this mix, particularly with the problems that we're now facing with unemployment and redundancy. And that is going to affect all age groups. So absolutely.
Just want to quickly ask you both, we're running a little bit short of time now, but I just want to ask, if you were both 15 again and looking at options post your GCSEs, what career would you seek and what route/pathway would you take to get there? Robert?
Well, I decided I'd be an MP at the age of 10. I was a very strange child because I demanded to go to Parliament because somebody, in fact, an MP came to my school and said that there was the Palace of Westminster had 1,000 rooms, and I didn't believe it. So I demanded to go and decided on that day to be an MP. And it took me 30 odd years to do it. But the other thing I always loved doing is writing. And I was a newspaper junkie. As I say, a very strange child. I used to go to Victoria Station because I lived near there in South London on Saturday nights to pick up the early edition of the papers. This is pre-internet days. I mean, that's how strange I was. So I would love to have been a journalist and do a journalist apprenticeship, and maybe even FE Week might have hired me to write some of their colleagues. In fact, FE Week does have apprentices, and I've met them, and they've been great. They help you with your work and help you with your events, and I'm sure you've employed them. I've employed parliamentary apprentices as well. So if I could come back as 15, perhaps I'd apply for an apprenticeship with FE Week and hope you'd hire me.
Absolutely, of course we would, Robert. You're more than welcome to come and do a traineeship with us at any stage, just to give you a bit of a taster. And yes, we've still got our apprentices. Victoria is now working on her degree apprenticeship for accountancy, and Evie and Leanne, who you've both met, are completing their level 3s as we speak, which is fab, and we'll retain them, which is super, and they make a great contribution to our organisation. Anne, what's your view? What would you do?
I think, well, I'm completely the opposite of Robert. I didn't decide to be an MP till much later in life, after 25 years having trained as a nurse. So I think I would go, I've thought about it often, I would do landscape gardening, and I would go to FE College and then hopefully an apprenticeship, and maybe combine that with countryside management more generally. So that is, it would be outside. I think it would definitely be outside. Maybe that's too many hours spent in the House of Commons that makes me feel that that's where I would now go. But I'm sure that, FE Week would ask me to write a weekly column on my journey.
So a landscape gardening, that sounds fab. Interesting. Would either of you take the T-level route? Because surely this is the answer that we've all been waiting for, the solution to our problems with high skills.
So I think T-levels are amazing. Oh, sorry, Anne, you go first. I beg your pardon.
T-levels are, and one of my lasting privileges as a minister was the design and kickstart to T-levels. T-levels are great. If I decided at 15 that was definitely the route that I was going to go, then yes, it would be via T-level. It gives you, the background in the classroom and also the work experience. But I think for the undecided, T-levels at 15, 16 is still maybe quite young to decide. But for me, as I say, I'm decided. It's going to be landscape gardening. It's going to be outside countryside management and running a weekly column for FE Week.
Fabulous. You can already have the weekly column out. Robert.
I think T-levels are going to be incredible, and it would be a very hard choice. And I think they will massively boost the prestige of education. And I would urge every parent in the country to and pupil and student to seriously consider it as an option, because I love apprenticeships so much. My first ever speech in the House of Commons was on apprenticeships. I would probably opt for to doing an apprenticeship. When I was 15, 16, I didn't even know about apprenticeships. I was just taught about A-levels, doing A-levels and going to university, which was just kind of what my father wanted us to do. But if somebody had said, Rob, you can do an apprenticeship with a newspaper like FE Week, or do an apprenticeship in work, or I would have loved to have done it, because it would have been very exciting, it would have been practical. I would have earned money at the same time, and I would have know that I would 90% chance of having a job at the end if I'd completed my apprenticeship. So to me, apprenticeships will always be number one.
Super, thank you, Robert. Just as we come to the end, I have got one question has been submitted to me. Sorry, there's been some technical difficulties my side with receiving the questions, so the producers have been trying to get them to me. But at this stage, I'd like to bring in Dr. Neil Bentley, the Chief Executive of WorldSkills UK, to see if he has any sort of thoughts about the discussions that we've had between ourselves this morning. Dr. Neil, are you there?
I am indeed. Hello, Shane. Hello, Anne, and hello, Robert. And thank you all for joining us this morning. I think you've certainly given me a couple of big challenges there, from a roadshow to bidding to host WorldSkills. But I'm used to that from both of you, so that's great. But I do think there is a massive opportunity, particularly in the framing of the white paper, with an emphasis on quality and standards and prestige, to really let's look again at the potential for bidding to host WorldSkills, because I don't think it's simply the hosting of the competition over a week or so. It's the galvanizing and catalytic effect that it could have around, as Robert, you were saying, creating a roadshow effect around the country as part of the bid, to build up towards bidding and hopefully winning and hosting, and more importantly, the legacy impact that the hosting of WorldSkills could have. And I think if we look at it as a part of a long-term strategy for mainstreaming skills excellence across colleges and training providers and apprenticeships, then it fits more with the agenda that hopefully will be coming, through really strongly when the white paper is published. And, as a partner and supporter of, the government's ambitions around improving prestige and quality, then we need to play our part as well in doing that, and work with the government to make sure that WorldSkills becomes the byword for excellence in working with its partners in education and business and governments across the UK.
Neil, what are you up to at the moment in terms of looking at what our international partners are doing more globally in terms of tackling the skills gap issues following the coronavirus pandemic and the learnings from that?
So I guess, today and tomorrow is part of work that we're bringing to the fore on working more closely, deepening partnerships with our international partners to see how they're coping with the pandemic, what innovations they're putting into the skill systems and learning from them. But also, as Robin and Anne were saying, teaching them a thing or two about what we get right and in terms of how we're building excellence into our skill systems. And next year we'll see a lot more of the work in our international partnerships coming to the fore with the likes of Chinese Taipei, Australia, Japan, Korea. I'm speaking at an event with Korea and members of WorldSkills in Africa and South America in a couple of weeks' time. I'm speaking hosted with the Department for International Trade next week with our partners in China. And so I think, as part of this broad agenda and global Britain on the world stage, I think the skills agenda and high quality skills has got to be at the heart of our economic competitiveness and productivity narrative to make sure that Britain is standing tall in terms of its skills system and how the skills system will drive forward post-COVID recovery. And so there's much for us to learn from our partners globally. But it's just as important that we don't just learn things, that we put them into practice. And that's why setting up our Centre of Excellence with NCFE and the new Innovation Network is about mainstreaming and embedding that practice into teaching standards in colleges and with employers and training providers and driving up standards in apprenticeships. Because that's the real difference that it's going to make, not just in terms of the elite of Team UK, but really making sure we're impacting the lives and futures of thousands and thousands of young people who can work with us on WorldSkills UK.
And very quickly, Neil, we've touched on the forthcoming white paper. What are your hopes and ambitions for the white paper later this month?
I'd love to see, as you were suggesting, more emphasis on standards and looking at international standards and the work that WorldSkills can play in really helping embed those in apprenticeships and technical education, but also working with us on driving up the prestige of technical career routes and apprenticeships. And there's much we can do with organisations like the Careers and Enterprise Company and others to make sure that, in careers advice in particular, that our careers advice isn't agnostic. We know there's a market failure when it comes to parents and young people understanding career routes, going into apprenticeships and the offer from college education. And so we need to make sure we're giving parents the breadth of advice and young people the breadth of advice and helping teachers through the Baker Clause, as Robert was mentioning earlier, really understand the opportunities for apprenticeships and technical education. And all of that, from our perspective, is about the rebalancing of the broad policy debate from a knowledge economy to a skills economy, because it's the skills economy, I think, we've seen driving forward, that will drive us towards an economic recovery coming out of COVID.
Thank you. Anne and Rob, you've both attended the events. Why do you think flagship events such as the WorldSkills Live are important to delivering skills opportunities for all?
Anne, are you going?
Oh, okay. Yes, I'll go first. Sorry, Robert, I was giving way to you. Robert.
Anne, fire away. You go first.
Okay.
We haven't heard from you as much.
It's a demonstration of excellence. My experience in Abu Dhabi was phenomenal, and I think the thing that struck me when I visited was how little people knew about WorldSkills in this country. So any skills competition is going to do a great deal, as Neil said, to make sure people understand that there's a way to boost productivity and boost the economy through a skills-based economy.
And Robert?
Well, I think I mentioned some of this before and came on, but really it's the FA Cup of skills, and millions of people watch the FA Cup, and it's the showcase of skills in our country, and it's the organisation, the event, what happens that will encourage, because they can see in practice how successful it is and what these companies are doing and what the team members are doing when they participate in events. It literally is like a beacon sort of lighting a light for skills around the country when people see what is going on. And really, the more people that see it, the better, because the more people that see it will, I no doubt, will want to go down the skills or apprenticeship route.
So just a reflective question for the both of you. If you were looking back on your time as skills minister, is there anything you think you could have done differently in terms of providing skills excellence opportunities for all? Start with Robert.
I would like to have transformed careers advice, which I think is a mess. There are great providers out there, but there are so many big organisations at the top with big pots of money, often replicating each other. And I don't always think the money is spent wisely. I think we need to radically change the way we do careers in schools, make sure that as much as possible that kids do practical experience, that you have skills advisors going into schools and all the way from primary upwards. And there needs to be radical change. And there's also a consolidation of all the different websites of whether it's the Careers Enterprise Company, National Careers Service, the Digital Apprenticeship, the National Apprenticeship Service, and a UCAS for further education, skills and apprenticeships, and you'd have it all consolidated all together, and teachers would be encouraged to choose apprenticeships or FE or technical education for their students alongside the same time that they're working with them on terms of what universities go to. When I say teachers should choose, I mean the teachers working there with the students. So I think there needs to be radical reform. I think careers is a huge mess. A lot of money, but not always being spent in the best way. And there's incredible opportunity out there to make sure that it's spent, because I don't think we'll change it, really build an apprenticeship and skills nation until we transform careers, as I say, from primary school onwards, careers advice and careers education. And that is despite the individual efforts of many careers organisations, especially those on the ground who do a remarkable job.
Thank you, Robert. And Anne, what would your reflection be on your time?
I'm quite an impatient person, so I think if I reflect back, I'd just like to do what I did, and I think we achieved some significant milestones in half the period of time, because we were behind the curve anyway on skills in this country. We've been a long way behind the curve on skills. I think that, and it leads in a little bit from what Robert talked about careers advice. Job route maps, I think, is a thing that we should have addressed. Alongside the apprenticeship reforms, alongside the development at T levels, it should have been right at the beginning of that, those new changes, that we brought in easily understandable routes to jobs. The mere word careers is arguably a rather old-fashioned term. Most people think about jobs, and interestingly, if you Google the word jobs, you don't get up any careers advice services, to be honest. So I think mapping out the journey through apprenticeships, through T levels, through post-16 education is my one regret, and that is the point at which to start, because in order to get young people and older people into the right jobs and careers, what we have to do is to educate the parents first. So I know Robert's frustrations about careers advice. If it was easy to fix, somebody would have fixed it already. What is crucial is the parents, but we've had decades of perpetuating belief that university is what you should aspire to. So it's not going to be easy to turn that round and say university is an option, but other options as well, and to put more balance in the system. So it would be there. I would have done everything at double the speed, and started with those route maps into jobs and careers.
So I always say that I always feel that sometimes politicians are criticised a little too much in terms of the reforms that they are enacting. Things take time to change, and to change the skill system to meet some of the ambitions you set out today would take a generation potentially. So what would a generational plan look like from the two? I know, Robert, you've often talked about this sort of setting out a decade funding plan for the education sector instead of these short, sharp budgets to allow more time to focus in on the money and how it's spent over a longer term period. So we're very short on time. So if in 60 seconds, if you could sort of outline for me what your generational plan for the skills system would look like, kicking off with Rob.
Well, what I said about careers network based on skills and consolidation, an FE sector that is second to none and has the prestige that it deserves, genuine apprenticeship guarantee for almost every young person who wants one, an adult lifelong learning account for people to choose adult learning, and skills credits for businesses who retrain their workers in terms of skills.
Thank you. And Anne?
It's got to be four component parts: independent training providers, FE colleges, employers, and I think the combined authorities. And it's got to include both adults and young people. Both are important, particularly now following COVID. It's got to have the backing of sufficient funds to make that a reality. And I think it's also got to be looking ahead. You can give politicians a bit of leeway, but actually government moves slowly. If you want government to move and you want that generation plan to have a real impact, I think devolution has got to be a major part of that.
Super. Thank you very much, both of you. I would vote for both of those plans, so we'd come together in unity. Really delighted to be able to speak to you both. To have two skills ministers in the room is rare. So thank you so much for your time, and back to you, Simon.
Many thanks. And if I could just ask both of you, I don't know if you're both still there, Robert and Anne, a very quick question each. Maybe you've gone. Yes, very quickly, because I don't think anyone's going to mind me just overrunning a tiny bit. One of the questions is actually quite serious and deep, and the other one is lighter. If I can start with a very serious question first to Robert Halfon. Second shelf down left-hand side, is that Sweep?
It is, because he was my childhood hero, Sweep, and I was once called on the stage to the City Show. I was so nervous, my knee was shaking. But I had a load of Hitler books, Hitler biographies, and of course they appeared on Newsnight and then appeared on Twitter. So I thought Sweeper was on my drawers. I thought I'd put him up there to cover up all my Hitler books. He's become quite famous. He's been in the Times. He's been on Guido Fawkes. He's been viral over the internet. So it's nice to know that these very serious things happen during lockdown.
And that's a lesson to everybody on crisis management, clearly. Thank you very much, Lee, for that. And Anne, it is a serious one for you, and that is just very briefly, for those people who are either currently working in or training to go into the NHS. You spent a considerable number of years yourself working in the NHS. Just some reflections or a message to those who are dealing with just the most remarkable and difficult time in that industry and within the NHS.
I think it's been very tough for all NHS staff. And we think of the doctors and nurses, and those are the ones that get a mention, but actually the support staff are really important, and the allied health professionals, so physios, occupational therapists, and the cleaners who don't get quite such a mention. So it has been an extremely tough time. Health and social care are great careers at every level. And going as an entry-level job is a way to have a lifetime of a really, really rewarding job and profession. And I think that, if nothing else, this crisis has highlighted the fantastic work done in our care and health sector, and also their reliance on all those who are in the supporting roles, without whom the system wouldn't run.
Many thanks for that. Many thanks to all of you, to the Right Honourable Anne Milton, to the Right Honourable Robert Halfon MP, and also to Shane Mann, who is Managing Director of LSEC. It looks like you have two more members of your team any day now joining you. Thank you very much indeed for that, and many thanks to BAE Systems, who sponsored that session, delivering skills excellence opportunities for all. Now, coming up at 1 o'clock is our next session, Supporting Young People and the Economy Through World-Class Apprenticeships. I can tell you it's an excellent session. I know that because we were fortunate enough to be able to pre-record it about a week or so ago, and it was days, I mean possibly hours into the announcement that we knew we were about to enter a second lockdown. So there was lots to discuss. I do hope you can join us just after 1 o'clock. On the panel will be Liz Pollard, who is Managing Director of Shared Services UK, BAE Systems. Colin Hagan, Managing Director of River Park Training. He is based in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And also Angela Joyce, the Principal and CEO of the Warwickshire College Group. That is also sponsored by BAE Systems. We'll be back at 1. Until then, have a good lunch. If you're having one, we'll see you again soon.